I thank you, and free Palestine.
Which part? Really?
I believe that integrity is one of the highest values and character traits that beautiful people have. When someone lacks integrity, there is a serious crack in their being, in who they are showing up as. Now, integrity doesn't just happen on its own, and I want to demonstrate a very clear way in which we struggle with integrity. And that is that a lot of times, especially as we are learning more and more as we go through life and we mature, we suddenly discover that we had a viewpoint that sounded sweet and convenient, and something that we believed in, but we suddenly, when someone starts showing us the ramifications of that belief, we begin to realize that this actually is not aligned with our integrity, with what we actually believe in otherwise. However, our integrity is being tested. You see, the root of the word integrity is integer, which is a Latin word which means whole or complete. Okay, and that means that my entire being is whole and complete. I do not show up on one day this way and another day that way. But in order for us to get lined up that way, it's not that simple, and we get tested. We get tested when we realize that we've been advocating for something, and maybe very vocally, and we suddenly discover, whoa, the thing I'm advocating for actually clashes with what I really believe. What do we do in that moment of awareness? Do we acknowledge, which is very, very difficult to do, requires tremendous inner courage and integrity, where we make ourselves whole again. We bring it all together. We get onto the same platform instead of standing on two separate platforms. Or do we defend the lie and do our best to make believe that this is whole with that when it really isn't? This is what we deal so much with. And what has been going on in society, at least in my observation, is that many different things that we are told as facts, and then we stand behind and we believe in, we suddenly find out are not as factual as we thought, and that people were lying about them, and we were supporting that. Now, that's okay. We believed it. We thought it was true. That's all fine. The question is when we find out that it is not true. What do we do at that point? And this becomes a critical moment in our own development and in our own character. Are we going to continue to stand behind the lie because we're too ashamed to acknowledge that we were standing behind something which wasn't true, not necessarily to a fault of our own? Or are we at that moment going to create deeper integrity and say, no, I'm not going to continue standing behind this. I'm going to acknowledge I made a mistake. There are so many areas in my life where I believed certain things, and as I matured and I understood better, I realized they are not wrong. As a rabbi, there are people who I've told things to, sometimes aspects of Jewish law where I misunderstood or was misinformed, and I believed that the law was X, and at some point I found out it was Y. And guess what? At that moment, I have a critical decision to make. Am I going to go over to that person and say, hey, I was mistaken? Where they may say, Rabbi, how are you mistaken? Don't you know this? And I'll have to acknowledge, well, I know as much as I know, and there's a whole lot I don't know. Or am I going to stand behind that and make believe that's true, or come up with some excuse which is dishonest, which just weakens my integrity? Here's an example in our societal views where a girl does this, where she expresses a viewpoint, and then we have Ben Shapiro, who just demonstrates the lack of integrity that this person is showing up with. Here, let's take a look at this.
All right, thank you, and free Palestine.
Which part? Really? It's a serious question. What What is it?
I'm not going to comment on that.
I mean, I saw you say from the river to the sea, so you can just say it out loud.
Yeah, from river to the sea.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I appreciate the idea that the Jewish state should be wiped completely off the map with the concomitant loss of life. But we're worried about climate change and the humanitarian aspects of climate change over the course of the next 100 years. Sure. Okay.
Here what he's pointing out is something very simple, that he's not attacking climate change or anything of that nature. He's just saying that this person who signs up to a certain point of view and worldviews is going to stand and demonstrate for climate change, worrying about life, while without blinking an eye, believes in the genocide of the Jewish people. Do you hear the lack of integrity in that? If we can't see these cracks in our integrity, then we will not bring any honesty to the table. And people who lack integrity are weak because we don't have reality backing us. People who are filled with integrity are strong because what they say is truly what they stand behind fully. Their entire being knows it to be true. And whenever they discover that there is a fault, which is fine because none of us always know the truth at any given moment, we acknowledge it. Are you willing to be a person who stands for integrity?